The Flower of France is the name of the newest album from pianist Quynh Nguyen, and she is here today to tell us all about it. So, Quynh, thank you so much for joining, and I'm glad we could meet up today.
Yes, thank you, Mary Claire. Thank you for having me.
Let's hear first a little bit about your background, maybe starting with where you're from and how you got into music.
I was born in Vietnam, in Hanoi, and I actually started music quite early. I think when some of my earliest memories were of music because I come from a musical family. My grandmother, my aunts and uncles all played the piano, and so I started from age 4, and um, I was taught by my uncle at first and then enrolled into the Hanoi Conservatory at age 6. And then I performed my orchestral debut as a soloist at age 11 and gave my first recital around that age, also around 9 or 10. And then at 13, I got a scholarship to study at the Vnyassin Institute in Moscow. And after that, I studied with Robert Turner. And my family moved to California after that, and I studied with Robert Turner, who was a professor at USC. And then I got to Juilliard and did my undergraduate studies with Vila Davidovich, who was one of the Chopin specialists. She was actually the first prize winner, one of the first female first prize winners of the Chopin competition. And I studied with her as well as with Jerome Rose at Mannes College of Music. I received a Fulbright to study with Yvonne Loriot-Messiaen, to study Messiaen's music, as well as do research on Olivier Messiaen's music with Yvonne Loriot-Messiaen, who was his widow as well as his foremost interpreter. And then completed my doctoral of musical arts at the Graduate Center of SUNY University of New York. So my studies have brought me to many different places, and I've been exposed to many different cultures as well. And I feel very lucky to have had the opportunities to do that.
Absolutely. It sounds like you've had a lot of mentors along the way, and
Yes,
it
definitely.
sounds like your family was supportive in the beginning too when you were first starting. That's interesting because I know for the composer, Germaine Tailleferre, her family was not supportive of her musical endeavors. Is that right?
Yes, that's exactly right. So her mother was a musician, and her mother taught her how to play the piano and was very supportive of her. But her father was completely against her musical education, and he felt that it was beneath a woman, and um, he even said something horrible like, for a woman to do music, it would be like prostitution, something horrible. And so when she was so good, she had to study behind his back, like her mother gave her lessons in secret, and she got so good she got and admitted to the Paris Conservatory. And when her father found out, he took her out and put her in a convent school. And it was only later on that she was able to go back to the Paris Conservatory. And her father was still not supportive, and he cut off all financial support, and she had to teach music in order to support herself. But she was so brilliant as a composer and as a pianist. She was a pianist herself, and she won many prizes at the Paris Conservatory and met many friends and was supported by a lot of influential musicians and artists of that time. When she was at the conservatory and also when she graduated. When she met Ravel, he was so supportive of her that he mentored her and encouraged her. And also when she met Satie, when he heard her music, he was so impressed. He said that she was his musical daughter. He was so impressed with her talent and gifts and her musical abilities.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize they had such a connection.
Yeah.
Well, so you have about an hour and a half's worth of music on this new album. Could you tell us more about what pieces we'll hear on it?
Yes, so I actually selected the pieces in the album to be some of the pieces I love the most, and what I found is would be the most important works that are published of her piano music that uh, that I could find, because there are actually still works of hers that to be discovered, and not all have been published yet. But so of the pieces that have been published, I found some of the most charming and beautiful, and the pieces I love the most, as well as most significant works that she wrote for solo piano, as well as some works that have not been recorded or performed often. And so the album is actually 78 minutes, or almost 80 minutes, and it contains almost a range of pieces written over about 60 years. And so the first piece on the album is actually the very first piece that she wrote as a student at the Paris Conservatory that was published. It's the Impromptu, and she wrote that when she was only 20 years old. And I sort of made a survey of her pieces. The album contains works for solo piano as well as works that she wrote for the piano, but are also for films and ballets, because she composed at the piano. And so even orchestral works, or works that are orchestrated later on from movies or for ballets, originated from the piano. So some of those works are really great concert pieces themselves. And so I included those in the album. And it goes over a range near the end of her career. In 1970s, she wrote one of her last pieces was Sangeré, which translates to monkey business. And that was written when she was already quite old, but she actually was so prolific that she composed throughout her life, and composed over 170 works and over 70 years of composition. And so that last piece was actually very humorous, because it's about monkey business, and you can almost hear the painting of the monkey. You can almost imagine that they're chattering and chittering and dancing around, and it's quite funny. Tailleferre was extremely imaginative, and she also had a great love for animals. She's always had pets all her life, and she had dogs and cats. And another piece in my album feature a piece called Xiang, which is a dog. And it was it really just a musical portrait of what you would imagine as a a little puppy or something, kind of skittering around and running around and yapping, and it's very, very funny and cute.
Aw. You've mentioned that some of these pieces have rarely been recorded, and I find that curious. I'm wondering if it's ever difficult or challenging to create your own recording when there aren't other, I guess, models to follow after to inform your own interpretation. Do you feel like you're pioneering in a way when you're making an album with music like this that we haven't really heard that much?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I try to get as much guidance as I can on the music. For example, I am very indebted to Paul Wehrhash, the musicologist and musician Paul Wehrhash, who had been close to Tailleferre during her life, and then who is a friend of Tailleferre's granddaughter. I have asked him for advice on tempi, for example, because he has performed a lot of Tailleferre's music during her life as well as after. And I try to do as much research as I can. And then I think for some of it, Tailleferre wrote very specific tempo marking, or specific words to describe what the tempo would be. For example, some of the ballet pieces are called waltz, and so they have a certain rhythm and a certain type of feel that you're supposed to have. And others, it's really what I feel would be musically correct, or would be musically satisfying as a listener and as a performer. And so, yeah, I think definitely, for sure, as a person who do a first recording of something, or something that hasn't been done much, there's a lot of creativity, as well as kind of like an informed interpretation to the pieces. For sure, that's that's something that's really satisfying, as well as just new and incredibly wonderful and creative to try to go on.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about the Suite of Flower music on this album. And I was curious, as I was listening through, I thought I noticed some motivic repetition, and especially I think it was the jasmine and rose and lavender. And I was wondering if you could just tell us more about what she's doing musically in the suite.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the suite called Les Feux de France, which is also the title of the album is derived from that. It's a suite for children pieces of children pieces, and there are 8 pieces that feature flowers that are from distinct regions of France, and they are quite lyrical and very beautiful, as well as characteristic. They are not actually based on folk songs of those regions. They just kind of allude to perhaps the mood and the feel. And they have gorgeous names like rose, jasmine, sunflower. And they are stylistically, musically, and lyrically gorgeous, but musically simple and technically simple as well. And there are definitely repetitions. And I find that Tailleferre is a very interesting composer because she is definitely a modern composer. She's part of Les Six. She's, in fact, the only female composer of Les Six. But she takes her inspiration from the music of Bach and the Baroque period. So she is definitely a neoclassical composer who is also influenced by the lush harmonies and the gorgeous melodies of Ravel and Debussy. And she takes her influences from everyday life and folk song and folk music, as well as like the Parisian cafe. And she belongs to this group of composers. And she's actually more identified with the group of composers, like I said before, Les Six, who has Cocteau's poetry as guidance, and then who has Eric Satie as one of the mentors. And they're the French composers of the time. And so she has this very sophisticated musical language that combines so many different distinct characters of different genre of music, that she put them all together, and she creates this very charming, alluring, attractive, and gorgeous music that's distinctively her own. She also incorporates some jazz elements and popular elements to it, and some bitonality as well as some polytonality. But back to what I was saying about her take from the Baroque music is that some of her forms are quite classical and Baroque in style. So they have ABA form or AABB form. Binary form. So they're very, very simple, and they have repetitions, just like what you would find in the Baroque era.
Picking up what you mentioned about the bitonality and polytonality, that reminds me of actually in your program notes, you talk a little bit about the chiaroscuro of colors. Is that something that contributes to that effect? I'm wondering if you could tell me more about chiaroscuro and how she creates that in her music.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So I, in addition to all the other elements that I just talked about in her musical language and in how she composes and she puts everything together, she also plays with light and dark in the sense of major and minor. Sometimes not only in like some composers play with, like for example in Mozart, he would play with a major key, and then when you go to a different section he would have something in a minor key. But in Tailleferre's music, she would have some colors borrowed from each key in the same phrase or at the same time, or maybe in the same chord. So it adds this really charming and unusual and quite piquant harmonic colors to her music. Within this framework of neoclassicism, which is the Baroque form, and with that very lush, romantic, beautiful, gorgeous colors that she creates. So it's just, her musical language, I find, is just incredibly beautiful, but so unique to her at the same time.
Mhm. Do you feel like there's a piece on this album that you really connect with on a personal level?
Well, that's a great question because there are actually several of my favorites. Like, for example, I do really love the Fleur de France, even though they are quite short and simple pieces, because musically they are so gorgeous. I also love the Impromptu and Romance. She wrote those when she was only in her 20s, and she was still at the Paris Conservatory. And her language at that time was still influenced very much by the music of Debussy and Ravel and Fauré. But I find that the harmonies are just lush and gorgeous and beautiful. And even from that time in her early 20s, she already had that very interesting twist of harmonic modulation that made her music distinctly her own and not like anyone else. So I really love those two pieces. And then I love also the Fugue du Parapluie. It's a fugue that features that actually makes me imagine the fugue umbrellas, like because there are so many different motives at the same time that she was featuring against a backdrop of staccato notes that sounded like raindrops, and I thought that was very amusing and witty. I love the Xiang, the dog piece, just because it's so amusing and cute. And then I again, back to the romantic side of her, I love Valse Volant. That's one of my favorite, actually, because it's incredibly beautiful and nostalgic and romantic, but again, with that very interesting harmonic twist that she adds to it that I have never heard before from any other composer. So those are some of my favorites.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure that we don't miss out on any other juicy details about this album. So, is there anything that you would like your audience members to know when they go into listening to it?
That's a good question. Well, I had to say I wanted to add that I'm extremely grateful for the Sorel Foundation for helping me and for supporting me throughout this project. Like without the Sorel Foundation, I would not have been able to conceive of this and conceive and make into reality this whole entire CD. It's a labor of love for me, and I'm extremely grateful to have them as their support, as a as a supporter. And I'm also very grateful to Music and Art for releasing it.
So, tell us about some of the upcoming projects you have.
Yes, so I'm excited that I have concerto written for me by Paul Chihara, an American composer, that will be featured on a Naxos CD that I'm releasing with Naxos this September. It has the piano concerto. It's called the Piano Concerto Fantasy, and I recorded this with the London Symphony Orchestra last year. So it would be featured on the disc along with the complete works of Paul Chihara for piano solo, as well as the piano duet that Paul wrote. And I'm performing the Piano Concerto Fantasy with the Seattle Symphony this upcoming season, as well as with the Springfield Symphony, with together with the Beethoven Choral Fantasies. I'm really excited about those two concerts. And I am also performing Tailleferre's music together with Olivier Messiaen's music in Paris at the Fondation des États-Unis, and in New York and Washington, D.C. And it would be my dream project that I would like to do next. It would be to record Tailleferre's concerti. I really love her concerto for piano and orchestra, as well as her ballade for piano and orchestra.
So, what I'm hearing is you're not busy at all, right?
Yeah, these are like my I really love and I'm excited about these projects, so I'm really looking forward to them.
Well, we can't wait to hear more from you in the future, too.
Thank you so much.
I've been speaking with pianist Quynh Nguyen about her new album of music from Germaine Tailleferre, and I can tell that it certainly is a labor of love. Thank you so much, Quynh, for being here, and we wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mary Claire, for having me.